Welcome back, everyone, to 2325 Fitness, your favorite health and fitness podcast. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Whelan Fu. He is from the United Kingdom. He has done his MSc in sports nutrition from Liverpool University, and he is also a certified nutrition specialist. He's also a certified strength and condition specialist. One really interesting thing about Wee is that he worked with the Malaysian team, I believe, for the 2018 Asian Games. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm studying UK. I'm not from UK, so I'm
Okay.
from
Hopefully,
Malaysia.
yeah.
But yeah, I did my placement. I did a 3-month internship in the Institute of Malaysia over there. So I'm kind of like providing support to the national team for the Asian game.
So you've been heavily involved with athletes for quite some time now.
Yeah, I would say so. That's probably my goal. I want to be a performance nutritionist. Although I do work with general population to with their diet, helping them to lose weight. But my main interest will be working with athletes because it will be different challenge and different sport, different demands and different position. So that interests me more compared to working with a general population.
Definitely. So just tell us a little bit more about like what got you intrigued or interested in this working with athletes. A lot of people want to go with the traditional, bodybuilding or like physique or like, getting the highest level in let's say Mr. Olympia or some of that level. But what made you interested to go into especially in the athletic side of things?
Yeah, I guess the interest start from when I was in Malaysia. I was very involved in sports since I was really young. So I started playing table tennis and badminton since I was 9 years old, and then I did that. I represented my high school and everything. So playing quite competitively. And then once I finished my high school, I want to do something related to sports. But there's not a lot of option in Malaysia. So I moved to Ireland first. So I did 2 years of sports science over there. And then it's actually during that time I found my interest in sport nutrition. So sports science is a very broad degree. So you learn everything about sports. So you learn about strength conditioning, you learn about nutrition, psychology, performance analysis, and everything about sport. But nutrition actually found my interest the most. Believe it or not, it's actually by listening to podcasts. That's why I'm kind of like uh, accept the invite to come to your podcast.
Yeah.
The podcast I first listened to is Iraqi nutrition. So Juma Iraqi is the host, but I don't think he's doing any podcast before. But there are also some other really good podcasts like Sigma Nutrition. It's probably one of the best in terms of nutrition and science. So that actually what I got my interest in sport nutrition by listening to those experts and then checking out their works. Yeah, so those, which is how I got into sport nutrition. Then I decided to transfer to UK Birmingham to do a degree, which is more specific to sport nutrition. So the degree is about sport nutrition, not sport science. Yeah, that's how I got to like different types of experience. I work with a swimming team and football team. Yeah.
So is UK like I mean, I'm not well versed in like, where athletic nutrition is the best in the world because we live in the US. So where would you say in the world or maybe in where you are, is UK like one of the top for nutrition and sports performance for like working with athletes or learning?
Um, it's difficult to say because I haven't worked in US before.
Mhm.
But in terms of funding, I think you got more funding in US.
Right.
But in terms of applied research, there's more in UK. There's more prevalence in UK. So in UK, you can find a lot of what we term applied research means. You can find a lot of information and study about the energy expenditure of like footballer, like Liverpool Football Club player. You can find how much energy they are spending per day, but I don't think you can find the similar information in like Los Angeles Lakers teams. There's no such information available. So in terms of applied research, there's more in UK.
That's great. That's great to know. So you have a lot of resources and information around you to work with.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So when you try to work with a team, but I think most information are limited to football, which is soccer
Right. Right.
in US, because this is kind of like the major sport over here. So you can find a lot of nutritional information, how the athlete diet and different types of intervention on football player or soccer
Absolutely.
player in UK.
And I'm personally, I love soccer. You know, I used to play soccer. I still play, and I've overcome with injuries. So we'll definitely touch some points on that. Now, for the audience, for people who are beginning their fitness journey or beginning to know about nutrition and diet, they hear this term, the body recomposition. You know, that's what you specialize in. That's what you're working with athletes. Can you explain what body recomposition is in the simplest of terms? You know, and how does it progress from a beginner to intermediate to an advanced person?
Yeah, I think I'll probably take a step back to look at body composition first before we go into body recomposition. So body composition means that if you break your body into two parts, so this is what we call two component. You basically have fat mass, and then also you have fat-free mass. So fat-free mass is everything other than fat. So you have your bone, water, and everything, and muscle mass. So that's the easy way to look at it. And then you also have three components. So the fat mass is fat mass, and the fat-free mass you can break down into lean soft tissue, and then you have your bone. And then you can even break it down into more four components. You have your fat mass, lean tissue, bone, and body water. So it's very important for us to know that, because most of the measurement is measuring probably the two component. If you are using like BIA in the gym, and you probably measure the two component. So when we talk about body recomposition, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the fat mass, and then we're trying to increase the fat-free mass, and more specifically the lean body tissue, not the bone, not the water, obviously, to increase at the same time, which is the ideal word, what we like for most individual want to achieve, more athlete want to achieve that.
No, just a quick touch on it. I mean, you've talked about like how it's important to know what body composition is, you know, how you're building lean muscle, and then how you recomposition, basically, you know, you want to bulk up or lean up in the most best of ways. Now, you've obviously know Michael Jordan, correct? And his coach Tim Grover, when he was playing back in the day, he bulked him up a little bit to get that lean muscle mass. So how would you say for athletes, like how difficult does it become for someone who's in that professional level, that competitive level, and putting his body day in, day out through different changes? Is it a difficult process for them to get the lean bulk without gaining much fat?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconception.
Okay.
Thinking that you got the most optimal body composition means that you can perform the best. It's not always the case. Body composition is body composition. Performance is performance. It's the two very different things. Yes, getting an optimal body composition will help you to perform, but it's not serious that you want to get as lean as possible. You want to get like the most muscle as possible. You can't ignore that. But the key thing for performance is you want to feel yourself out for training and competition. So that's another consideration over that, which makes changing body composition a lot more difficult, because you have a lot of other things to consider, especially during in season. Like for NBA, for example, if you are playing a game every day or every 2 days, you need to recover for that. If you are in a calorie deficit, then you won't be able to perform. You will have high risk of injury. So those are the things we need to consider more when you're working with athlete, rather than just working with general population, where you can just we go in calorie deficit, or we go in calorie surplus. So there's more things to consider, because ultimate athlete is to win the game. That's the most important thing. It's not about I gain 1 kg or not. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a quick add-on to that. Is he mentioned recovery, and I think that's something we always focus on as well, saying diet and nutrition being, you know, a big percentage of how the body functions in general. So how can you relate nutrition to body recomposition?
Yes. I think most in your audience probably will aware that, or when you're trying to gain muscle, you need to be in a calorie surplus. If you're trying to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. But when you look at the literature, it's actually more complex to that. being in a calorie surplus will help you to gain weight, so your body weight will increase. That's the science. That's the law of thermodynamics. You can't kind of like falsify that. And then if you have been in a calorie deficit, your body weight will drop. But in terms of the changes, whether you gain fat-free mass, whether you lose fat mass, it's a lot more difficult. So let's go to some of the research. So the first research line I probably want to point out is a research by Jose Antonio. I don't know whether you're aware of, which is the president of International Society of Sport Nutrition. So he did a lot of series of research on very high protein diet. So the proteins is up to 3.4 and also 4.4 gram per kg. So they have two groups of bodybuilder, which has quite experience, have 7 or 8 years of experience. And then they let them one group, they go with just normal, even though it's normal protein, but their protein is still pretty high, about 2.3 or 2 gram per kg. And then compare with 3.4 gram per kg. Interestingly, even though the 3.4 gram per kg group, the high protein group, eat about 400 calories more, of 300 to 400 calories more, but they didn't put on any fat. They actually lost fat mass, and then they also gained the same amount of fat-free mass after the 8 weeks of training. So even in a hypercaloric condition, you will still be able, I think the body weight, they gain about a kg, but they gain fat-free mass, and then they lose fat mass, which is body recomposition. So you gain fat-free mass and lose fat mass.
Right.
But when we look, so that's the hypercaloric condition. But when we look at the hypocaloric condition, there's a research done by Professor Stuart Phillips from Canada, from McMaster University. I don't know whether you heard him before. So the first order is Longland et al. So 2016, that paper is a pretty famous paper. So they were in a calorie deficit. It's a very well controlled. So I think it's 40% of the reduction in calories. And then they have a high protein group. They have like 2.4, 1.6, and 1.2. I think it's 2.4 versus 1.2 gram per kg group. And then for the 2.4 group, they actually are able to gain some fat-free mass and lose fat mass at the same time. So you can see here, we have a hypocaloric condition, we're able to do so. And then we have a hypocaloric condition, calorie deficit, we're still able to see a body recomposition. So it's a little bit more complicated than that to say, oh, you need to be this amount energy or that amount energy. But the common themes is that you need to eat sufficient amount of protein. So all of the research, they were having at least about 2 grams per kg of protein. So that's probably one of the things to consider.
So to add on to these studies, what makes muscle essentially would it be protein, carbs, and fat combined? Because this study we're focusing just on excess protein. So for our viewers, what would you have to say with fat and carbs involved with the nutritional aspect?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that we haven't discovered a lot yet in terms of how that to contribute to muscle gain. But I think once you're having enough protein, carbohydrate, I think is quite important for resistant training. There's a recent research, I think it's from a Scandinavian group, from Danish group. Basically, they look at glycogen, muscle glycogen, so where you store carbohydrate. So after a bout of resistant training, you basically store glycogen in actually different places. So there are 3 different places. Even though the glycogen is not depleted enough, probably about 40%, there's one place the glycogen store closest to your myofibril, so the intermyofibril glycogen. So that's the glycogen that contribute most to muscle contraction. It's actually depleted the most. So you might argue that you actually need to have actually sufficient amount of carbohydrate before a resistant training session, because we know that training is the primary stimulus if you want to gain more muscle. So if you can't perform during training, if your performance start to drop because you don't eat enough carbohydrate, that might be the thing to consider as well.
Right.
So I know you just mentioned about the hypercalories and the hypocalories, correct? So a lot of times when people talk about body recomposition and research, even like the basic research for someone starting off, they always talk about like calorie cycling. They talk about like having low calories on your rest days or off days and having high calories, which is like a bulk and a deficit at the same time. So does that play the same role when it comes to hypercalories and hypocalories compared to your protein, your fats, and your carbs when you're doing a suddenly high surplus one day and a really low deficit the next day?
Yeah, interesting that you asked me that question. So that we call a refeed day or diet break. There's only one study did on that, which is from Dr. Bill Campbell. So it just came out published recently in 2020, last year. So basically they have two groups. So one group, you have a continuous group. So you have the same calorie deficit for a week and for 7 weeks. And then the other group, you have 5 days of deficit and then 2 days of refeed. So you're up to maintenance on weekends, but the calories majority from carbohydrate. So you have 2 days refeed. What they shown is the differences in terms of reduction in fat mass is actually the same, but the intermediate group, the calorie cycling group, actually be able to maintain fat-free mass slightly better than the continuous group. So what's the actual science behind, the mechanism behind? I don't think we understand yet, but that could give you some idea. So that offer two strategy. You can count your calories every day. You can still able to lose fat, or you can play around with it. You can be more flexible, take a more flexible approach to it.
So it's more about like putting your body through a different, like putting your body in a state where it's not in either a deficit or a surplus for a given period of time, but it's like mixed in between.
Yeah, I think it's more psychologically. If for dieter, if you're on a weight loss, if I say to you, you're able to like on weekends, you're able to go out and have a larger meal with your families and friends. That psychologically helps a lot better. But I don't think that it will work for everyone. Some people that likes to kind of like stick to it, like same thing every day, where some people may want a break. So I think that's the thing what we come to more individually to improve adherence. Yeah, the actual science, there are some mechanism, but I don't think I don't think anyone will be able to provide a really good answer for that.
Absolutely.
I want to add on to that. You said like sometimes it's a psychological thing and we need like a break on the weekends, which leads me to, cheat days and cheat meals. Sometimes like we're mentioning excess protein and having the same clean meals all the time. Not everyone can do that. From experience, I know I have these cravings. So what do you think about cheat meals and cheat days psychologically and physically for the body?
I think one thing, like, let's be specific to, your background with athletes. Like we know that the general population knows that, eating some kind of, there's the notion of flexible dieting, which is most recommended, but then the notion of like eating unhealthy processed food, junk food every single day hinders your performance, right? So let's talk about like how do cheat meals or cheat days affect, and would you in your experience recommend that, or would you recommend that people incorporate this in their regular diet?
Okay. Let's define some of the what we call cheat meal to the audience. So cheat meal basically you just eat whatever you don't care about the macronutrient. You just basically like binge eating, and you normally for the cheat meal you normally eat the food you are restricted. So you restrict during the day and then you binge on that. And also psychologically you will feel guilty after eating cheat meal or after having a cheat day. So that's why I'm not recommending it, and I don't like it at all. Because why are you doing that? You are not it's not helping with your progress. Because if you want to have a cheat meal, let's say if you want to have a cheat meal, why not plan for it? Why not have a diet break, have a refeed day, so you have less calories in the days before, so that you allow yourself to have more calories for that. And that actually helps a lot better in terms of psychologically. You enjoy the meal, you enjoy the food you want to eat, and then you know that you are not overeating. You are still inside your target you are still inside your energy budget, and then so that you're able to go again next week, and then still able to achieve what you want to achieve. So forget about the cheat days or cheat meals, and just focusing on and plan in advance. And also, I don't like to look at, like, if you people say, oh, I crave for a certain thing. I don't like to look at food like a black or white, and I don't like to label a food like this is junk food, or this is good food, or this is bad food. Yes, there's a differences in terms of nutrition. So some food have a little bit more nutrient dense, and some food is less nutrient dense. But that doesn't mean that you cannot eat the food that's less nutrient dense. You can still have them, but you need to control the portion. If you have a day you only eat the poor nutrient dense food, then definitely you will suffer because you don't have enough micronutrient. But only if you have a meal or some snack that's less nutritious, then you still be able to like achieve what you want if the rest of your meal is making out with a really good nutrient dense food, a lot of fruit and vegetable, whole grain, lean meats. And yeah, I think it's about how your perception is more psychologically. It's more how we perceive that to approach it. So that's probably the way I will approach. I will try to educate my client or my athlete about how to approach that one, because it's no point to lie to yourself all the time, because cheat meal basically you're cheating yourself. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that point up, because I personally, so just to give background, I was heavy 200 pounds about 2 years ago, and I lost a lot of weight, and I was able to body recomp myself, get some build some lean muscle. And for the longest time, I would do a restricted diet and do a cheat meal or a cheat day one day. But then I realized the next day my body would not feel the best. I would not have the best energy. And I would, again, like you mentioned, have the psychological issue of, oh, did I mess up my diet? Am I gonna have problems with it? So that's a very interesting point you bring up, because that leads me to the next point is, like, I think psychologically it plays a huge role, and needs to have a lot of patience, I would say, when it comes to body recomposition, correct? So would you see, or in your athletes or in just regular clients, where do you see that people fail when it comes to, starting off with body composition and then moving on to the next stage of body recomposition?
Yeah, I think the biggest failure is lack of understanding about the principle, and then also trying to cut corners all the time, trying to look for easy solution, for instance, or having this supplement, or having go on this like meal replacement, and this whole thing, try to have a short-term solution without recognizing the principle of how you actually achieve that. So for instance, to give you an example of my client, he previously tried out a lot of different types of diet, so a lot of different like solution. Not don't want to mention anything, but yeah. So he basically tried out different thing, but he lack of understanding about how to actually lose weight. Because if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit. So when he worked with me, basically we did really simple thing to like track the calories, make sure we are in a calorie deficit, and then he just lost weight continuously. So he just lost weight a pound per week, and then keep doing that. So I think understanding the principle behind of weight loss is very important. So if you want to lose weight, you know that you need to be in a calorie deficit. So you need to work out how much calorie you need. How do you going to work out? You can actually measure your body weight weekly and then compare that if that changes. If not, then you potentially need to reduce your food intake, your calorie intake. So I think those are things quite important. And then in terms of body recomposition, we know that your protein intakes need to be sufficient. And then if you go a little bit more beyond that, the timing of protein can actually play some role as well. But it's not major thing. It's not that if you are not having protein immediately after your training, you're going to lose all your gains or anything like that. But there's a recent research by Cody Horn that basically have like 3 different groups. So there's one group have carbohydrate after training, and then the other group have protein and they are the group that have more and more protein. It's kind of like greater protein intake after training. And then they found that the graded protein one actually recomp body a lot better compared to carbohydrate, even though their total protein intake is the same. So all three groups they have like 2 grams per kg of protein intake, but having sufficient protein post-training might lead to a little bit better body recomposition. Maybe those sort of things you need to kind of like be aware of. To answer your question before I go off tangent, I think the lack of understanding and also try to create a habit is also another area, because a lot of time if you go on short-term solution, you are not changing your behavior, you are not changing your habits, you are not building out really good habits that helps you to sustain your change. So that's another area that's often overlooked for beginner especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned one thing, that, how when people are under deficit and you go on a week-to-week basis, you check your weight and you try to recalculate according to that. Now, let's say if someone is eating extremely low calories, for example, 1,200 calories, and they're at a point where they're plateaued, they can't move beyond it. Would you say, depending on the person, that they're to drop the calories, or should they increase their activity? Or for example, an athlete, right? I mean, they're constantly burning calories, they're constantly moving, they're constantly like playing sports, active, and they're burning tons and tons of calories. Now, if they want to drop some weight, they're already eating at a sufficient level that's like very low. But how do they change that and move forward?
Okay. If the client comes to you saying that I'm eating 1,200 calories but I still couldn't lose weight, very likely, I would say 99%, you have a issue with the underreporting over here, because for most people eating 1,200 calories, you will lose weight. But let's assume that you are reaching a plateau, right? Let's assume everything is correct. You are eating the calories and then you couldn't lose weight. Whether do you increase the amount of energy expenditure, or do you reduce the amount of calories? For athlete, we tend to try to increase the energy expenditure rather than reducing the calories too much, especially because there's a new concept, what we call energy availability. Basically, the amount of energy needed for a physiological function. So if you reduce your energy too much, if you go below a resting metabolic rate, so the energy for your physiological function, then you potentially can go into what we call causes like metabolic adaptation, or causes basically lead to a different consequences on your health, on your hormones, especially for female athlete, and also may impact your bone health as well. There's some evidence recently. So yeah, it's a difficult one when you work with athlete. You are basically working on a tightrope to see which thing we should look at.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when, I mean, like I said, athletes burn tons of calories when they're rested. So definitely appreciate that insight.
I wanted to step away from athletes just for a second. For like the average person, maybe just getting into fitness, I'm just thinking about what I hear very frequently about someone. Let's say a wedding is coming up or some big event in a month or two, and people say, I'm going to get on a diet. And when we hear diet, I know in my eyes it's something different, but what a person generally means is I'm going to be on a calorie deficit for the next 2 months. And I've seen some people that literally just eat one salad a day. And we're talking about protein being one of the main calories that we're trying to get in. But in this sense, it's just the salad, no protein, nothing. So let's say they get in even 400 calories a day at times I've seen. My question is, when could it be unhealthy for someone to be like, I'm just eating this, minute little meal for the day and for 2 months? When would it become unhealthy for the body?
Yeah, very interesting point. I don't think I have in any research to show you the answer, because I don't think anyone will do research on that. But the thing is, what they're trying to achieve is they're trying to look good They're trying to, if that's a guy, they're trying to, like, the coat fits really good. If that's a girl, they probably fit into a dress. So that's probably their main goal. And then it's to try to convince that, because 2 months is not going to sustainable if you're going to eat a salad per day. You're not going to sustain that. You probably sustain it for like three days or even a week, depends on your willpower. And then you start binging, you start like going to what we call yo-yo dieting again. You lose the weight and then you eat, and then you lose the weight, and then ultimately after the 2 months, nothing changed. Whereas I think if you use a more strategy approach, at 2 months time, you can still lose a decent amount of weight. To be honest, if you work with a coach and then you're able to go a little bit more aggressively, depends on the starting level, depends on how much weight how much fat you can lose. You can still lose a decent amount. Let's say if you're losing a pound per week, I will say that probably about moderate. You still be able to lose like 4 pounds. That's right. You pay 8 pound, which is 4 kg. I'm more familiar with kg. You still be able to lose like 4 kg, and that's kind of like the moderate. And then you can even go a little bit more aggressive, maybe 5 or 6 kg. Like that actually change quite a lot if you are losing purely fat, if you're eating enough protein, if you're maintaining all your muscle and then lose the fat, and that will actually helps you to look better, like 6 kg. Unless you are having a really high body fat, then maybe that's a little bit unrealistic.
So,
Right.
just as what Talha mentioned, so caloric deficit is, I think, what we're talking about is could be unhealthy in certain aspects, correct?
Yeah. So calorie deficit is related to what we call the energy availability as well. So you're saying they try to step away. I just mentioned athlete for a brief while. So for athlete, you don't want to stay in low energy availability. But calorie deficit is an interesting one, like for normal healthy, like just normal population. If you're having a really large calorie deficit, obviously that's not going to be healthy. If you're eating below your resting metabolic rate, that's not going to be healthy. But what I'm interested in, if we can look at, there's a lot of recent evidence talking about time restricted feeding. So you are actually in calorie deficit for a certain hour of the day. In a deficit, that might be actually more beneficial to health compared to like just eating all the time and feeding all the time. There's a lot of evidence showing that you want to restrict your feeding window to 10, at least like minimum 10 hour per day, not to go below the 16. So there's some evidence about restricting your feeding window and then have a longer fasting window that might be actually more beneficial to health. But if you are talking about calorie like deficit, like really long, you are being you restrict your diet all the time, then I don't think that can be healthy. It might be difficult to actually get a like sufficient amount of micronutrient if you do that for too long. Yeah.
So advice for, once again, beginners, rather than, because I feel like athletes have more experience and people to ask, but someone coming tomorrow into the fitness field or weight loss journey, let's say we want to give them a plan for the next month or two, and their goal is to lose 10 pounds of fat. What would your advice be for, obviously when I use the word quickest, everybody's different, but what would be your plan of action for someone to lose 10 pounds of fat? And then maybe some examples of when they have those cravings for some kind of cake or something. What are some satisfying foods to make them feel full?
Yeah. So let's address the first part of your question first. So let's say if they want to lose like 10 pounds of fat. So what I will do is I will actually know do they have any time period for that? Do they want to achieve that? But for most population, I don't think time in that is an issue. like because you are not like bodybuilder, you don't have to meet a certain time for a show or anything like that. So you're probably very flexible with that. And what you're trying to do first, if you try to create a calorie deficit, that's the main thing. And how to do that, you need to know what you are eating. And so I always advise my client to track some sort of to track using like my fitness power and those kind of things. It's not really about the accuracy. At least you are aware of how much you are eating. You have a log, you have some history you can go back to, and then you can start working on that. You can have a target, and then to see whether you track your body weight with that to see at that specific amount of calories do you lose weight. If not, then you potentially need to drop. If you work with a coach or nutritionist, it's a lot better. If you are on your own, then you can do it yourself, but it may be a lot harder. It may be need to, because there's no one calculate for you how much you need based on the energy you spend, and so based on your body composition now. So if you work with a coach, it's a lot better, it's a lot easier. And then I also make sure my client will have enough protein. And then to address the second part of your question, if you have a craving, just eat the food you want. Don't worry too much about it. What you need to do is to learn to able to control the portion size. I think that's the thing you need to learn, and then that's how you're going to move forward in future. Because if I going to tell you you are not going to eat cake or anything you want for the rest of your life, you are not going to do that. The first thing you want to do is to eat cake. So that's not going to happen. So what you need to do is to learn to how to control your portion size. So my clients are if they're having like the family or friends birthday party or anything, I will just tell them go and enjoy for me, and then we can when you are back, and then we can focus on the next few weeks, or when we can plan ahead. So maybe on the day you're having less calories before that event, or during that event you learn how to control it. You just eat the food you enjoy and then ignore the calories that you're not enjoying. So it's more about learning. It's more about, if you understand the principle, you understand the energy deficit. Like the cake, probably like, I don't know, it's not going to go like the 1,000 calories. If you learn to control portion size, if you keep it to like 500 calories, it's not going to change the world. If you only have once per day, once per week, I mean, and you're not going to change the whole calorie deficit. So yeah.
That's a very sound advice, I would say, because again, a lot of these things, me and Talha, we can relate to ourselves. And this is like, because we're from the general population, we're not professional athletes. We came through our, different fitness journeys. And then that aspect you mentioned about portion control and, calculating and understanding, for me, for the longest time, I would, let's say if there's a pint of Ben and Jerry's, I would end up eating like a few spoons every single day just to satisfy my craving, and at that point I wasn't really focused on, managing my calories or balancing them out. But when I started doing that, I could eat a whole serving, which is 400 calories, and still have some calories remaining to eat everything else. So, and that helped me personally to satisfy my craving, because now I can enjoy it rather than having to worry about going over or under my calories. So it's a very sound advice you gave, that learning, I think understanding where your calories and learning how to control your appetite is the biggest thing.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And that's why you need to, if you're able to work with a coach, and that will be a lot easier. They will help you with all the process to it.
Now, I know that me and Talha were discussing about this, and this is something, I mean, I don't know about you, Talha, but I hate cardio. I used to like despise cardio. I do it because I know there's a huge need for it. It's better, but I think Talha can touch more on this, like how cardio plays a role. So Talha, you want to shed some light on like, how cardio plays a role in fat loss, and how we can help us as well.
I know some people go through this testing phase where like, let me try to gain weight and see if I can, shed it off and how long it takes. Just experiment. So that's kind of what I did this last summer. We were at home with COVID. I still kept up with working out, but I cut out cardio. I just wanted to experiment what exactly would happen with me specifically. And I noticed I started gaining weight really quickly. And then as soon as I implemented cardio after 3 months, so it was a 3-month experiment, actually I gained about 25 pounds in 3 months. That's what happened. And then as soon as I started implementing it once again, I noticed slowly, it's not like you're going to lose 10 pounds in a day or something, but it was a key factor in cutting off that fat once again. It's like what you were mentioning about, energy expenditure versus calories in. Huge, makes sense to me. And anyone that's kind of experimented with that would know the same thing that I went through.
So again, the question for you is that we have is cardio necessary for weight loss or for body recomposition? Again, keeping in mind just an average person, not athletes, not professionals. Is cardio something that necessary? Because you've probably seen this with your clients as well, that people always probably ask you, hey, what's an alternative to running? What's an alternative to biking? What's an alternative to cardio that I can do so I can lose weight?
Yeah, very, very good question. For weight loss, I don't think it's necessary. For health, I think it's necessary.
Okay.
The way I look at exercise is, I don't want to look at exercise as a punishment for my client. I don't want to look at the exercise like, or how much you spend during exercise, that's the amount of calories you can eat in your diet. I want to look at exercise as something you enjoy doing, something you look for doing, and something you like, so that you're doing more consistently. We know that adherence is a pretty important thing. So if you don't like cardio, then you can do a slightly different thing. Maybe just getting out more step, or reduce the rest period between your set, so that you can get some sort of cardio working. Or you can do something, if you want to do high intensity sprint interval training, like a few seconds and then have a rest. That's also some sort of cardio. That's like different tons of way of doing cardio. I'm sure you can find the one that suits you. Like, again, I don't want to look at cardio for weight loss. Like, for health, I think that cardio is necessary. Especially, there's a lot of evidence link that your cardiorespiratory fitness, your VO2 max, actually linked to mortality. So if you're higher VO2 max, you have lower risk of death. So you basically can live longer. And then that's actually linked with a whole host of different disease, like cardiovascular disease and cancer risk. So I think for weight loss, maybe not, but for health, I think cardio is probably necessary. I think you need to find, and there's a tons of way of doing cardio. Just find a way that suits you the more, and then do it consistently.
And that's a very interesting perspective you give, because I was talking to Talha earlier, and I did this for a whole year where I was just lifting weights, focusing on my diet, and did no cardio. But that kind of like gave me some muscle, and I didn't gain any weight at the time. So I think, as you mentioned, it's not really necessary. But sometimes what happens is people, like we talked about, low calories, right? Now, research has also shown that cardio burns more calories. So would you recommend in that case scenario that if someone's already at a insufficient amount of calories and now they want to burn more, or increase their deficit, should they incorporate cardio at that point?
Yeah, that's a very, very really true point. Because, like, I think this sort of scenario probably happened in a bodybuilder, where you are very lean and then you have a very low energy intake. Then definitely you need to try to incorporate cardio to increase your energy expenditure, because there's only so much low energy. There's only so low you can go in terms of energy intake. So you increase your energy expenditure. And the one more thing I want to add into my cardio point is, even though you can actually spend a lot of energy in cardio, but the amount of energy compared to your food intake is not that much. For instance, if you spend like 500 calories of cardio, that's actually not a lot when you put into food, and that's why cardio is probably not necessary for weight loss. But in that case, if your energy is very low, then I think, yeah, you can do increase energy expenditure through cardio. But I don't think this period can last very long. So like in bodybuilder, they would do like contest prep, but it's not going to be very long, probably a few weeks, and to do that, and then it's actually there's a lot of evidence if you cycle the weight like bodybuilder, if you go really lean and then post contact, you just like binge or eat whatever, you gain a lot of fat. It's actually not very good for health in that way, especially there's a lot of evidence in combat sport athlete where they're trying to kind of like make weight because they do a lot of weight cycling because they have a lot of fight. And then I think the later life, they all have like higher body fat. They couldn't lose the weight. There's actually some research show that this weight cycling might impact later in your life if you do that regularly. So which is kind of like the painful side of these sports. So something we need to see how we can help with that. But yeah, I don't think that period can last very long.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And now I know we covered a lot of information. It's very impressive the information that you have and that you shared with us. It was so new to myself and for Talha as well. What would you say is certain tips? Again, we're talking about, pretty sure you deal with a lot of average people who are just, want to get fit and healthy. What would you say is some tips that people want for, like, of course, body composition and then body recomposition? Because everyone has this idea that, oh, I want to lose fat and build muscle. And there's this research that shows that that's possible in the early stages of fitness, but it becomes difficult moving forward. So what are some tips that you would recommend for the audience that they can sustain for a really long time?
Yeah, it's difficult to give a generic advice to everyone. So I probably will break down to different types of audience you have.
Sure.
If let's say if you have a beginner who have a body fat percentage is a little bit high, so you have some fat to lose, I probably will advise him or her to probably go on a slight hypocalorie diet. So you are in a calorie deficit, and then in combination with like regular gym lifting weight regularly with high protein intake, probably around 2 grams per kg, and then get the timing right. I think by doing that, you will recomp the body. You basically will gain muscle through your resistance training. You will lose fat with the hypocalories diet. And then if you are starting out with a very lean physique, basically you don't have any muscle and also you don't have any fat at all. I probably will advise to go on a little bit of hypercalorie, so you have the calories to build the muscle. Because if you are high in body fat, you can use the calorie from the body fat to build muscle. Because if you are very lean, then where are you going to get the energy coming from if you are eating a hypercalorie diet? So you probably want to make sure you have in a calorie surplus so that you can able to pull on muscle. And also the same theory about like you need to lift weight, and then also you need to get the protein right as well. But in terms of the trained athlete, we still see that even in research you still be able to recomp. It's not saying that it's not possible. So it may become less. So you might only like gain 1 or 2 kg after lean mass after 2 months. So you probably need to be more patient. I would say just focusing on progressive overload in terms of your gym, and then make sure you get enough protein. And then if you're happy with your weight, and then you can stay with like neutral, stay in energy balance. Or if you try to increase your weight, then you can go like hypercalories. Or if you try to reduce weight, you can go hypercalorie. So I think it's for the more trained athlete or population, you need to become a little bit more patient, because it's going to be a really slow progress, especially for muscle gain. Sometimes even a week time, you may not see anything going, because it's all about 0.1 kg or 0.2 kg. You might not even see that on scale. Yeah, just be a little bit more patient.
So there you have it, folks. You, depending on what category you fall in, you know now how you can, do your body recomposition. A lot of people get confused with the scale. They say that, I'm in a deficit and I'm weightlifting, but after a week or 2 weeks, my weight is the same, but my body is changing. What would you say to that?
Yeah, because when we look at scale weight, there's a lot of different factors can affecting it. So when you look at body weight, there are two key factors. First is body water. So about 60 to 70% of our body is from water, is made out of water. So we know that sodium intake can affect water. Your water intake can affect your body water as well. And also carbohydrate intake can affect water. And also if you are a female, then menstrual cycle can also affect water retention as well. So you have a lot of factors can affect it. And also you have your fiber intake, your residue. And then this is actually one of my research I'm going to do in my master, basically looking at low residue diet on body weight. So if you have a really high fiber intake, because fiber will digest slowly, basically they will stay in your stomach or intestine, and that will cause a increase in weight as well. So your food intake, what food you are eating, can affect your body weight. That's why we always recommend to track your body weight daily and then get a really average. That's probably the best metric you can use, and then just compare it weekly. And so I did that with all my clients. So yes, body weight is one way. It's one way of progressing, but there's a lot of other ways to progress as well. So if you are, let's say, if you are starting a beginner, like maybe eating enough protein per day, that's maybe some sort of progression. Or if you are not eating enough fruit and vegetable before you start eating that, there's another sort of progression as well. You can look at progression in terms of maybe like step count, there's another way of progression. So don't get too focused on just weight. Also, you need to look at just a broader picture. Like if you look better, that's also a good way of progress as well. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you coming out today and breaking down body recomposition and body composition for our audience. Where can people find you on social media, or if you want to, work with you or get more information, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on basically most of the popular social media on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at WLF0503. I post an infographic, probably a little bit more scientific to audience, but you can get in touch to me over there. So I also have a Twitter account, so the same handle at WLF0503. You can add to your show notes and everything like that. And yeah, feel free to send me a DM or anything like that if you want to learn more about my coaching program, or if you have any question about like body composition or anything, feel free to get in touch. I'm going to answer it for you.
Yes, I can attest to that. We have some really, really good information on his Instagram. So go check him out, folks. And we thank you, for being with us today. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is my first ever podcast, and I hope you learn something from it.
We're definitely going to be covering a lot more topics with you in the future. So I appreciate you taking out time, coming from across the world, and being able to make this time for us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.